Okay, assalamu alaikum. Sorry for the delay today. Had other pressing concerns. Yes, let's go, Paraboy. How are you? Assalamu alaikum. Hope everybody's well. Let's get this started because of the delay already. All right, okay. So let me just jump straight into it. So what I want to talk about today, actions, not beliefs. So as I said in the description, if anybody read that, I'm going to be sharing my my tadabbur and my looking into the verses which talk about who goes to Jannah and who goes to a nar, to hell, and how all of it is to do with actions. It's not to do with beliefs. And as I said in the description, and if you check some of the posts which I linked, belief isn't the same as emaan. Okay, belief is not the same as emaan, and kufr is not the same as disbelief. You know, the classic example of that is, of course, shaitan. You know, he's a kafir, but he believes in God. All right, so you can be a believer in God and still be a kafir. All right, and somebody who doesn't believe in God is not necessarily a kafir. But we'll get to that. But you know, so let's put that a little bit on the side. Okay. Emaan and kufr is not what we're talking about. We're looking at I'm going to be showing just the verses, what they say about those who enter Jannah. Okay, so actions and beliefs. That's what I'm going to be looking at. Some of these verses I've already mentioned in some of the posts. Others are I might make a new post about them. So this is one of the primary verses which I like to show. It's in Surah An-Najm. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض ليجزي الذين أساءوا بما عملوا ويجزي الذين أحسنوا بالحسنى الذين يجتنبون كبائر الإثم والفواحش إلا اللمم إن ربك واسع المغفرة. Okay, and then the verse continues. This verse basically says to God belongs whatever is in the heavens and the earth, whatever is on the heavens and whatever is on the earth. That why, that introduction, what is the point of that introduction, and why is that the case? That he may recompensate, so reward, ليجزي الذين أساءوا بما عملوا, that he may recompense those who do evil with what they have done, بما عملوا, and recompense those who do good, الذين أحسنوا بالحسنى. Now there's other verses like this. So Surah Al-Rahman, هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان? Is God asking? It's a rhetorical question, right? Is the reward of goodness anything else but goodness? Okay. And then this verse continues. It says, those who avoid the major sins and immoralities, the huge sins, murder, false witness, these sort of things, all right? And immoralities, zina, which is to do with out of marriage, sexual intercourse where a married woman is involved. That's zina. If the woman is not married, it's not zina, but that's another topic. So the major sins and immoralities, only committing slight ones. إِلَّا اللَّمَمْ إِنَّ رَبَّكَ وَاسِعُ الْمَغْفِرَةِ. God is huge, vast in forgiveness. All right, and He knows best about you when you're in the wounds of your mothers, etc. All right, so one of the key ways of having your sins forgiven is just staying away from the big sins. Stay away from the huge things. All right, and that's basically don't do those actions, and God will forgive all the other actions. Okay. Next verse, which I like to put on. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن يفعل ذلك عدوانا وظلما فسوف نصليه نارا. Okay, whoever does this in enmity and oppression, we will cause him to enter hell. That's basically leading on from the previous verse. But it says وكان ذلك على الله يسير, and that is if God إن تجتنبوا كبائر ما تنهون عنه نكفر عنكم سيئاتكم وندخلكم مدخلا كريما. So again, that last part is saying, if you avoid the major sins which you are forbidden, we will remove from you your lesser sins and admit you into a noble entrance into paradise, of course. So that again tells you it's about actions, okay? If you don't avoid those major sins, you will go to hell. Okay? If you avoid them, you go to Jannah. That simple. Another one, a very key verse for everybody to always keep in mind. الذي خلق الموت والحياة. Why? The one who created death and life. Why? ليبلوكم أيكم, to test you or try which of you is what? Greatest in emaan, best in salah. What? أيكم أحسن وعملا. Whoever is the best in deeds, in actions, amal. It's got nothing to do with beliefs. Okay? This is not a test. This world is not a test of if you are able to believe or if you are able to be right or wrong. It's a test of which of you can act rightly. So even when you're wrong, if you are able to act in a true way, in a beautiful way, then that's acceptable to God. Okay? وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْغَفُورُ, right? The famous verse, he who created death and life to test you as to which of you is best indeed. All right? So that's that verse. And there are so many verses in the Quran which just say basically, enter Jannah bima kuntum ta'malun, or they enter Jannah because of what they did. And this is one of them. أولئك أصحاب الجنة خالدين فيها جزاء بما كانوا يعملون. Those are companions of the Jannah, خالدين فيها, to be therein, for ever. In my case, I say timelessness. فيها خالدين فيها جزاء, a reward for what? For their belief, because they believed God is one, because they accepted La ilaha illallah. No, بما كانوا يعملون. Okay, بما كانوا يعملون. Those are the companions of paradise, abiding therein forever as a reward for what they used to do. Again, تلك الجنة التي أورثتموها بما كنتم تعملون. This is the paradise, this is Jannah, which you are made to inherit for what you used to do, what you did. بما كنتم تعملون. The whole Quran, beginning to end. Okay, it's بما كنتم تعملون. Enter Jannah and hell بما كنتم تعملون. Right? إنما تجزون ما كنتم تعملون. You are only being compensated for what you used to do. That's the therapy of hell. Contentions. Okay, so I want to mention a few contentions that people will say. So among those is that those who will tell you that those who have kafar, الذين كفروا, do good deeds. They do good deeds. Okay, but because they don't believe in God, God does not accept their good deeds. He makes their good deeds void. Right? And always when I bring this up, somebody will mention the verse at the end of Surah Al-Kahf, 18, verse 105 in Surah Al-Kahf. That's especially used. Okay, but let's look at this verse. So the start of it, going back a few verses for the context. قُلْ هَلْ نُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا. Shall I inform you of those greatest losers as their deeds? Who are the ones who have the most loss in terms of their deeds? The most loss. Okay? It's those الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا. They are those whose efforts are lost. Their efforts is wasted in this worldly life. Okay, what does that tell you? Wasted. سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا is lost. They're not working on something which is beneficial, which is good. Okay? While they think that they are doing good work. They think they are doing good, but they are not. And this is the problem that people mix up. الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, they do not do good deeds. Okay? Hum يحسبون, it says the verse. Hum يحسبون, they think they are doing good works. They think they are doing, not even amal, it doesn't even say amal here. يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا. Sun'a is a different word than what's always used, which, those enter Jannah because of what they used to do here. No, it's not true. It's Sun'a, okay? They're Sina'a. It's like, industrious kind of work, okay? Yeah, they are completely lost in it. Now, the easiest example of this, of course, are people like ISIS, okay? They go ahead and do all these horrendous, terrible deeds, and they think they are doing good deeds. And that really is the worst loss, okay? To be engaged in evil, pure evil, while you think it is pure good. And you think that God is going to reward you for it, okay? That's exactly what the verse is talking about, right? Shall I tell you who are the biggest losers in terms of their deeds? Okay, they are working, thinking they are doing good, and they are just increasing their punishment. They're increasing their loss in the akhirah. Okay, it's not somebody who works a lot of really good deeds and he's just not rewarded for it. That's not as big a loss. A big loss is when you're working for your own destruction. Okay, and why is it like this? Why are people like ISIS like this? It's because they've rejected verses of God. Okay, they've instead accepted what whom they look up to. Okay, especially people like Ibn Taymiyyah. Okay, you'll find him at the forefront in the thought of all extremist sects, all people who want to kill and murder and in the name of Allah. You'll find him there. And this next verse says that. Sorry, I forgot to put a translation on this one, I think. When did I put it on the next part? أولئك الذين كفروا بربهم. Those are the ones who have كفروا بربهم ولقائه. No, sorry, بآيات ربهم ولقائه. They have كفروا by the verses of their Lord and the meeting of Him. So ISIS will go and kill an apostate, all right? And in that, they have done kufr with the verses which say freedom for religion. Okay? That's kufr with the verses of Allah. And also the liqa with Him, the meeting with Him. Because even if they had that real emaan, the real emaan, which is a feeling. Emaan is a feeling in the heart. Okay? It's not, intellectual understanding that God exists. That's not emaan. Okay? But to actually have, to have actually emaan with the liqa, that you will actually stand before God. You will stand before God, right? And that's completely gone. فَحَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُم. Because of that, because they have kafaru by the verses of their Lord and the meeting with Him, حَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُم. Their actions have become sort of lowly and futile and wasted. حَبِطَتْ. Okay? فَحَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُم. Okay? God didn't, nullify their deeds. Their deeds are like that. Their deeds are mahbut. Their deeds are that's how they are. They are like that because of this. All right? Because of this state that they're in. فَحَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُم. And then God says, فَلَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا. Okay, they think on the day of judgment they're going to come with all of these good deeds, right? Big, weighty good deeds. Okay, they're going to have a lot of weight with God on the day of judgment. All right? They've been thinking they're doing good deeds. Okay, they think they're doing good deeds, right? And they think they're going to come on Yawm al-Qiyamah and they're going to have a lot of weight with God. They're not going to have any weight with God. And on the day of judgment, Allah is not going to give them any weight at all. فَلَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا. These people are going to be worthless on the day of judgment. Okay, so that's that. تِلْكَ جَزَاؤُهُم. That's their reward. Hell. جَزَاؤُهُم جَهَنَّمْ. Why? بِمَا كَفَرُوا. Because they have done kufr. وَاتَّخَذُوا آيَاتِ وَرُسُلِي هُزُوًا. And they didn't reject the verses of God. They took it. In this verse it's saying they took it. بِمَا كَفَرُوا. They had kufr generally, and they took the verses of my verses and my messengers as just a joke, as something like lightly. They ridicule. Huzu'an is to take something lightly. Okay, it doesn't mean you actually are ridiculing only, but it also can mean that. Part of the ridiculing of the messengers is to attribute to them what is not for them. Okay, so they are not taking the signs of God seriously. Because they are not taking the signs of God seriously, the verses of God, what's in the Qur'an, they end up doing all of this crazy evil deeds while they think they are doing good. That is the worst loss. Okay, so these verses don't mean that, and that's the same throughout the Qur'an. Whenever you see الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, okay, and somebody tells you, okay, they are being, God is rejecting their deeds because of their disbelief. It isn't because of their disbelief; it's because of their kufr. Yes, kufr, but not disbelief. Okay, not because they didn't believe in God, but also the deeds that they do are not good deeds. And this is what the next thing is going to show. There are examples of the Qur'an, in the Qur'an, which talks about the actions of الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. So the example of the deeds of الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا is given in the Qur'an. Right? So this verse in Surah An-Nur, there are two verses right after the other, which just give an example of what the actions of الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا are. So here it says, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالُهُم. Okay, those who have kafaru, their deeds are like. Okay, now we're gonna have a whole imagery. God is gonna give us an imagery, an example of what their deeds are like. أَعْمَالُهُم. Let me just go straight to the translation. But those who have kafaru, their deeds are like a mirage in a lowland or desert or desolate place. Okay, بِقِيَةٍ. Okay, which a thirsty one thinks is water. Okay, you think from far away, you may think that their deeds are good. Okay, you think there's water there, But when he comes to it, he finds there is nothing there. He finds nothing. Okay? لم يجده شيئا. Okay? حتى إذا جاءه لم يجده شيئا. There's nothing there. It's not good. There's no real deeds there. There's no good deeds there. Okay? لم يجده شيئا ووجد الله عنده. But he finds God there. Okay? فوفاه حسابه. So he gives to him his account. He renders to him his account. He finds it nothing but finds Allah before him, and he will pay him in full his due for what he did, for the works that he's done, right? For the evil that he's done. Okay, but there's no good deeds there. It's a mirage. Okay, and Allah is swift to account. Swift to account. That's the first imagery. This imagery of what? Of the deeds of a living. They are not good deeds. Okay, they're not good deeds. They don't. Well, and we'll come to that in a minute again. The second verse, right after it, it says, أَوْ كَظُلُمَاتٍ, or like darknesses in a huge, deep ocean. في بحر لجي يغشاه موج, over it is waves. من فوقه موج, above it is waves. Above it are clouds. Okay, ظلمات بعضها فوق بعض, darknesses, one on top of, some of them on top of the other. When he sticks out his hand, it's as if he can't see it. Okay, إذا أخرج يده لم يكد يراها. ومن لم يجعل الله له نور فما له من نور. Okay, من لم يجعل له نورا فما له من نور. Or their deeds are like darknesses. Okay, does that sound like good deeds? Do those sound like good deeds? Darknesses within an unfathomable sea, which is covered by waves, upon which are waves, over which are clouds. Darknesses, some of them on top of others, and that's how they have it. Okay, these living kafru, they do their deeds, and it's just darknesses over the other. Right? You try to strip away the darkness for them, tell them, hey, this is not right. What you're doing is not right. You'll find another piece of darkness underneath to justify the darkness on top. Okay? Do you know better than the Sahaba? For example, they will tell you, do you know better than Umar ibn Khattab, or do you know better than Ali ibn Abi Talib, who burns people alive? So they say. Okay, it's just darknesses, one on top of the other. Okay. When one puts out his hand, he can hardly see it. You put out your hand as if you can't see it, and this is sort of metaphorical. You put out your hand, you don't even recognize yourself. Okay, these people, if they took stock, if you were in their position, you would not be able to recognize yourself as a human being. Okay, you put out your hand. Is that me? Is this me? It's as if I can't see it. Okay, لم يكد يراها. Okay, or you can take it another way, that you put out your hand, you're in so much darkness you can't see yourself, because you are surrounded by the darknesses which has been given to you by others. Okay, and by sects and scholars and this, and you must do that, and you must be like this. All right, they've covered you. استحوذ عليهم الشيطان فأنساهم ذكر الله. Okay, and when you forget yourself, when you forget Allah, you forget yourself. When you forget Allah, you forget yourself. Okay. فأنساهم أنفسهم. Allah says in the Qur'an, okay, لا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم. Don't be like those who forgot Allah and you made them forget their own selves. Okay, how do they forget Allah? By remembering everybody else but Allah. They remember all the scholars, all the narrators, all of the collectors of hadith, but they forget Allah, and so God makes them forget themselves. And then at the end it says, and he to whom Allah has granted no light, has not granted light, for him there is no light. For him there is no light. Okay, these actions they do, these are all examples. These two verses are giving you an example of the actions of alladhina kafaru. Okay, the actions of alladhina kafaru. So have a look at them, ponder them. Do they sound like good deeds? They are not good deeds. And the last thing I want to finish by is the famous saying, by their fruits you shall know them. Okay, don't look at somebody, they say, okay, he doesn't believe in God, okay, he's a kafir. No, you know the kafir by their fruits, by what they do, right? You know the kafir by what they do. Okay, if you take it by their claims to believe, or la ilaha illallah or something like this, you'll never be able to know who is a kafir, even though you don't have to be able to point somebody and say this is a kafir, but you'll never know unless you know them by their fruits. Okay, you would never know that shaitan is a kafir. Okay, unless the Quran, if the Quran had not put, if Allah had not put that in the Quran, calling shaitan a kafir, we would right now think he's a believer. We'd call him a mu'min. Okay, we would not say he's a kafir, because that's how distant we are from the understanding of the Quran. Okay, All right, so that's basically what I wanted to share today. Let me see who I've got backstage that we can bring in. And again, my apologies that we started very late. Life, as they say. Okay, who do we have here? We have Surah. I'm going to put you in. Okay, let me actually first check the chat. Salam, Caravan. Yes, Salam alaikum again, Adriana. It's very good to see you. A lot of people giving salam. Salam alaikum. Qur'an centric. MashaAllah, Brother Joseph. Doesn't look like anybody has anything to say there. Okay, so Surah, I'm bringing you on. Salam alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm very, very well. How are you?
Very good. Good to hear from you again.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be back on.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
I wish I had something more meaningful to say. I just felt like saying something.
No problem. It's fine. It's fine. That's all good. It's all good. So how's your week then been?
Alhamdulillah, it's been very, very well. Last week was my final week of GCSEs exams, so I'm relieved to get that off my chest.
Yeah. Okay. MashaAllah. Yes, this is now the exam time, right? Where everybody is finishing off for the upcoming holidays. Good.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah. Well, where are you, by the way, in the UK? Which area?
Right now, I'm in London.
Okay, nice. Which part of London?
Wembley.
Wembley. Okay, mashallah. I live actually when I'm actually back in the UK, I'm in West London. I'm in West London. Notting Hill, Westbourne Park area.
Oh, okay, not too far then.
Yeah, not too far. Alhamdulillah.
That's good.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, let me try and bring on somebody else then.
Certainly, someone who has something to bring forward to the table.
No, it's okay. It's okay. If you want to stay on, and if there's nothing, we can bring you on as well. Maybe I'll bring more than one of you on at the same time. So just stay on. I'm just going to remove you from the stream, stay in the backstage, and you can come back on, no problem.
Okay.
Okay, we have Hector. Assalamu alaikum, Hector.
Wa alaikum assalam. Sorry for that. I was looking for the unmute button. Couldn't find it.
That's fine.
How's everything? How was your week?
Alhamdulillah, it's been good. It's been quite an eventful time, hasn't it? In terms of news and stuff like that. But it's been a busy week for me, to be honest. The last week, I'm hoping that work will not be so hectic in the next 2 weeks.
But by any chance, are you all receiving information from what's going on in Colombia, South America?
No, go ahead and let us know if you want.
Oh no, there's been protests for 4 weeks now.
Okay,
a few people died in certain cities. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Over what? Over.
From what I understand, the government is raising tax to the poor to pay off debt that they asked for at the beginning of the pandemic.
All right.
I guess the World Banks are asking for that money. So instead of taxing the rich, they're taxing the poor, like every country does. So
yeah, exactly. Alhamdulillah, what can we do? So do you have anything for us today?
Yes. Well, 2 things. First, I want to go back over that one phrase about how if you avoid the major sins, the minor sins, inshallah, will become erased or will be pardoned. I think would be a better word. Okay, now.
No, it says actually kafir. Kafara is not the same as afu. Afu is the pardon. Okay, so there are a number of words in there's afu, okay, there's safh, there's maghfirah, and there's kafarat al-dhunub. Okay, these are all different terms, of course, in the Quran. Afu is basically like when you pardon somebody, like a criminal can get pardoned his punishment, but he's still considered a criminal. He's still considered a criminal, right? That's afu. The highest thing is, of course, maghfirah, which is why God says all the time, Ghafur Rahim, right? Maghfirah is like when you're completely covered, okay? And it's covered with mercy as well, okay? So there are those whom, when God, maghfirah, they will have their bad deeds even swapped for good deeds, Bad deeds swapped for good deeds. Yes.
Oh, okay. But it's
But here it's about kafar. So it says here, first of all, this verse, the first verse I put here, it just says, الذين يجتنبون كبائر الإثم والفواحش إلا اللمم إن ربك واسع المغفرة. So it talks about غفران here. Okay, those who stay away from the major sins and fawahish and indecencies, except the small sins, truly your Lord is vast, wasi' al-maghfirah, vast in forgiveness. Okay, which means what? Yeah, He will forgive. Just so it's just you will stay away from the major things, and God will forgive. And that's what the next verse, where did I put it? The next verse says as well. Okay, over here it says, إن تجتنبوا كبائر ما تنهون عنه. If you stay away from the big things which you are prohibited from, نكفر عنكم سيئاتكم. Okay, we'll do kafara of your sins. Kafara means to remove the sins completely. Okay, but it doesn't contain that mixture of rahmah in terms of it can be they can be swapped for good deeds. Now that happens with tawbah. Okay, when you tawbah, God can swap your bad deeds for good deeds. Okay, that's mentioned at the end of Surah Al-Furqan. If you check the end of Surah Al-Furqan, you'll find that statement being talked about how God will swap the أولئك الذين يبدل الله سيئاتهم حسنات. Those are the ones whom God will swap their bad deeds for good deeds. Okay, but here kafara means what God will obliterate the bad deeds. So kafara is like the same thing that we say when you expedite it, what's called expedite, or I forget the word in English, but when you make an oath, you break your oath and you have to wash that away by something. Okay, the kafara. All right.
Okay.
And the same thing, like if you don't, if you missing a salah isn't missing. Sorry, a psalm is just you just make it up later. Okay.
Yes,
but that's
yes.
So you have here this. It comes together. Okay. So maghfirah. Okay, we'll include that. But here we're talking about, in this verse is mentioned kafara. نكفر عنكم سيئاتكم وندخلكم مدخلا كريما. We'll cause you to enter into a noble entrance. All right.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. Now, a question towards this. As Sunnis, we're taught that I'm really only. That's all I know, as I mentioned last time we spoke.
Of course.
As Sunnis, we're told that if we do a constant minor sin, that can turn out to be a major sin. Now, again, these are what the scholars say, but I really never heard this in the Qur'an, that if I continuously do minor sins, that may turn out to become a major sin for me. Have you heard of any? Have you heard of any?
No.
I'm probably sure you've heard of this idea, but
I've heard of the idea, but in the Quran there isn't. I mean, they put it on a certain verse which says, من كسب سيئات وحاطت به سيئاته فأولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. Right. So the verse says, whoever gains an evil deed. So كسب سيئات. So he does an evil thing. سيئات. Okay. وحاطت به خطيئته, and his mistakes are surround that. So that's interpreted as saying, okay, he's done this thing, and then he keeps on making the same mistake around. It's all around this evil which he's gotten. Okay, but I don't see it that way. But so they say yes, it's a one bad deed which you keep doing it again and again and again, and then أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. Those will be in hellfire. To abide therein forever. But this is different. I mean, the sayyi'ah here, I think it's different. I mean, it's like, for example, somebody doing a bad deed. For example, let's say somebody commits it's already a bad deed like murder. You'd already go to hell for that. But let's say a smaller sin, okay, and then just to cover up that smaller sin, or based on that smaller sin, you end up doing more and more and more evil. It's on top of that. So it's almost like somebody I don't know. Let's say somebody catches somebody in a compromising position, so then he kills him. Okay, and then he finds out that this person has taken pictures. He left the pictures somewhere, and somebody has seen them. So then he goes and blackmails that person, and then so you see what I mean. It becomes like sort of, that's what I think. It becomes like a web. أحاطت به سيئاتهم. Sorry, خطيئاتهم. So you got a certain sin, central sin, and connected to that, he's done all of these other evil. Okay, so it doesn't stop, doesn't stop back and say, okay, I've done this evil deed, I need to stop. No, all of the rest of his sins are connected with that. Okay, so I don't see it as being a small sin. You repeat it, and it becomes a big sin. No, you should. In the end, of course, it's not a good thing to think, because in the end, one of the bad things we have in Sunni Islam is that we think that you can go on doing sins all your life, and just before you die, you make your tawbah and you're fine. If that was the case, it would have been fine with Fir'aun, right?
Yes,
of course. His tawbah right before. No, that's not. There's a certain tawbah which Allah says it's incumbent upon him. Okay, innama tawbatu ala Allah. I was going to do maybe a stream about that, but innama tawbatu ala Allah. There's a tawbah which God has already said He's going to accept. There's other tawbah, okay, other repentance, which it's in the mashia of God. Okay, God He will accept or not accept, right? But there's a certain tawbah which God has said He has made it fard on Himself, so to speak, to accept. And that is the tawbah of the person who does an evil unknowingly, and then very quickly repents. Okay, very quickly repents. So he does something evil, and then soon, yatubuna min qareeb. Soon they repent, and so that person, God will 100% accept their tawbah, right? And then between that and that's on the top scale. On the lower scale, Allah says, وَلَيْسَتِ التَّوْبَةُ لِلَّذِينَ يَعْمَلُونَ السَّيِّئَاتِ حَتَّى إِذَا حَضَرَ أَحَدُهُمُ الْمَوْتُ قَالَ إِنِّي تُبْتُ الْآنَ. Okay, and tawbah is not, in God's sight, it's not for the person who continues doing evil, okay, until when death approaches him, he says, I've made tawbah now. What does that mean? If you're ever in a position where you are actually fearful for your life, all right, where you're in a position where you're fearful for your life, your tawbah at that time means nothing. It means zero. Okay, you cannot wait until you're in a position where it looks like you might die and then you decide to do tawbah. That's not a tawbah. Okay, a tawbah has to be some good deeds as well. Oh, but that's a whole other topic.
Oh, well, that'd be an interesting topic. Now, I've been reading the 7th surah of the Qur'an, and maybe you can help me out with one phrase. Ayat 100 of the 7th surah.
Oh, wait, let me try and get that. Pull that up. See how I can get this.
Again, since I'm not very good at the Arabic, I'm reading off of an English translation.
That's fine. Let me try and share my screen for that.
Of course, everyone translates it to their understanding.
Yeah. Including me, don't forget.
Yes.
All right. So we're 7, right?
Okay, so let me read it in English, and then
which verse is
it? Surah 100. Ayat 100.
Ayat 100. Okay.
Surah 7, which is Al-Araf.
Yeah,
and then Ayat 100.
There we go. I don't know. Can you guys see that? Yeah, I did put it. Okay.
Yeah, we can see that. Well, we see. Yeah, we see it. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so it starts in English. It starts to those who inherit the earth in succession to its, and then in quotation, in parentheses, previous predecessors. It is not a guiding lesson that, if we so willed, and this is where I'm having it's not very clear for me. What does this? What would be the expression in Arabic? If what might be translated as, if we so willed, we could punish them. Why would God say, if we so willed? What went around this? What happened that this ayah was revealed with this phrase? Because again, this is a conditional phrase, and it's used a lot in when we talk about in English. Well, I studied philosophy for 4 years at the university. So when we talk about logic, it's one of the premises: if this, then that.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as the Arabic is concerned, I really don't know. I'm understanding it that it was revealed because I guess a group of people probably thought that God's punishment has to be obligatory for people who who do wrong, I guess, if that's a good way I can understand that. But this example, if we sold willed, I guess it would be in law nasha. I guess that would be the expression.
Yeah, that's it. And لو نشاء أصبناهم بذنوبهم. This part,
Yes.
yeah.
So, do you understand this the same way that I read it from here from the English translation, or did you understand in a different?
Yeah, pretty much. Except, I mean, remember each word. Like for example, here it doesn't say عذبناهم بذنوبهم. And it didn't say we punished them. Okay, we know that will be in azab, right? So here it says asaba, yeah. أصبناهم بذنوبهم. Okay, we cause like when you asaba is like when you, like for example, when somebody's shooting at a target and he hits the target, we say asabat. Okay, asabat.
Like bullseye.
Yeah, sort of like it's like the thing will hit them. Okay, so we'd say asabatu saham. You know, the arrow got him. The arrow hit him. So it's sort of like saying we would get them by their own sins. Okay, we would get them by their own sins. Asabnahum bidhunubihim. Okay, because of their own sins. All right. And what the first part it's saying is أَوَلَمْ يَهْدِ لِلَّذِينَ يَرِثُونَ الْأَرْضَ مِنْ بَعْدِ أَهْلِهَا. Okay, is it not like enough as guidance? Isn't it something that will make it clear? You know, أَوَلَمْ يَهْدِ, isn't it a reason for them to take heed? لِلَّذِينَ يَرِثُونَ الْأَرْضَ مِنْ بَعْدِ, those who inherited earth after its people, meaning not after the people before who were destroyed. Okay, so there were people before who had been destroyed. Okay, and you are now the people who are in charge. Okay, you are the people who are sort of like up, right? And لو نشاء أصبناهم بذنوبهم. Okay, يرثون الأرض here, and of course it doesn't have to be because there were people whom God destroyed. It could just be that they just inherited it, and then their own sins caused them to be the people beforehand. The same thing happened to them. أصابهم الله بذنوبهم. God caused their sins to be a cause of their downfall. Okay, you can think of it also in terms of sociology. There was this I forget these things because I don't try to keep notes on things like this, but I remember, if anybody knows this, but there was this study that some sociologist made where he said there are 4 things which, when they become common in an empire, then that empire goes to ruin. Okay, among them was when housing prices are too high. Okay, so this person, I forget who it was. I wish I could have these things at my fingertips like others, but he studied all these different civilizations and how they came to ruin. Okay, how they came to ruin, and he concluded, I think it was 4 things, which when they become widespread in the society, then the society or the civilization, the empire, whatever it is, crumbles. Okay, and I remember looking at them, then they were all sins. They were all sins. Things like extortion, being very extortionary. In prices and things like this. It was a very unique sort of thing. But so this can be, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to think about it in terms of that what's called. It doesn't have to be that it's like divine punishment and rocks coming down from the sky. In terms of just saying to you that those who have taken over the earth after the people beforehand, isn't it enough for them to understand that they could also be gone, okay, for what they do. Okay. They could also, their own sins could be their downfall. And then Allah says, وَنَطْبَعُ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ فَهُمْ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ. But their hearts are sealed, okay, so they won't hear, they won't listen. So that's how I see that. Let's have a look at the previous verse. أَفَأَمِنُوا مَكْرَ اللَّهِ. So this is actually a verse where Qur'an centric has a nice a video about this, about the makr of Allah. Okay, about what is the makr of Allah, and it's all about how his take on it is that the God, of course, does makr with the people of evil. Okay, so that أَفَأَمِنُوا مَكْرَ اللَّهِ فَلَا يَأْمَنْ مَكْرَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْخَاسِرُونَ. Okay, do they feel safe from the planning of God? All right, and the planning of God is against those who plan for evil. right? Who plan for evil. So it looks like it's going directly from that onto this statement, right? So their sins could be their makr of evil, right? Their cunningness, their deception in doing evil, and that's what could cause them to go down.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I was really just caught up on that part that says if we so willed. Like when I read that one, the English translation, when I read that, I thought that, okay, well, is there someone that thinks that Allah will not do this, or is there someone that thinks? Because what I try to do is when I read the translation, I try to think of what's going around the time of the Prophet Muhammad that this revelation was sent down. Why, and so maybe I was thinking maybe the Quraysh probably thought that, I don't know. I really don't know.
That's exactly right. I mean, the Quran, one of the biggest things we're missing, like in the Seerah literature, most of the Seerah is just all about battles. And this year this battle happened, this year this battle happened. The whole of the Seerah of Mecca is completely almost absent, pretty much. But the Quran has the dialogue between the Prophet and Quraysh, the dialogue of the ideas, okay, of what they said and what the Prophet was saying. The ideas that they had and what God was bringing to, against that. Okay, and there's a huge amount of that in the Quran. Okay, but it's not put as part of our biography lessons of Seerah of the Prophet. Okay,
unfortunately.
But it is. So yes, that's exactly a fantastic way to look at this. Okay, look at these as dialogues. There's an argument being developed in the Quran. Okay, there's a constant moving dialogue that's moving forward, all right, and it's based on what came before it, right? The Quran doesn't, when it mentions certain things, and certain things are references are mentioned which were mentioned before, it's aware of that. Okay, verses which come later, which mention something before, are aware of what was mentioned before.
Okay. Yes, I've noticed that because I did take your advice, and I from a few weeks ago, and where I should read the Quran from the first revelation, what was first revealed, and then add up. I did find a web page, and where someone organized the Quran from the first ayahs that revealed. And yeah, of course, if you don't read what was revealed first, then and you go into more depth, a person probably get lost, because you do have to read what was revealed before. Like before I started reading this one, I did read another surah that was revealed before this one. I can't remember which one it is, but it did hint towards the people of Thamud, the people of Ad, but it didn't get into details. And then when I started reading this surah, I started seeing the details in it. So
no, they see that's one of the ways to actually read the Quran. Okay, the Tadaburat of the Quran is that way. It gives you an idea of how the argument was being developed in time. Okay, in time with the people there at the time. Okay, whereas the arrangement as it is now, the way it's arranged now, okay, it gives a different thing, a different argument almost. Okay, a different, not a different argument, but there's a different take there's something different which is being presented, which is more universal. Okay, it's more universal. Right?
I agree with you on that. Yes. Yeah. I agree with you on that, because I do take on Sundays. I have a friend that's an alim from Al Azhar, but it's in Spanish. But we're going over Surah Al-Baqarah right now. We've been in it for the past few months already. It's like every week, it's like at least one ayat, two ayats. And now that I'm reading it both ways, I do see that the approach is totally different. And to be honest with you, for me, this approach of first reading the first ayats that were revealed makes everything clearer to me. And a reason, and another thing, and just I'll finish with this. Another thing that reinforced that idea was on the same surah, ayat. Let me see. Ayat 101, right? Ayat 101. Such were because as we read in Surah Al-Baqarah, the sixth ayah talks about the kafirun, in quotations, I guess, and how their hearts are sealed, and that if the Prophet just keeps giving them dawah they're not going to accept, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of people, I've heard some people, most atheists, that said, oh well, why is God going to punish me if he
Yeah.
sealed my heart? But then I read this part here in this translation further down in the same surah as I mentioned, and it says, no, hold on, it's not 101, or is it 101? And it talks about how people rejected faith and then he sealed their hearts, but not that he sealed their hearts and then they
Yes.
rejected faith.
Yes,
You
exactly.
understand?
No, that's exactly true. It's it's strange that people actually think that God seals the heart so that you don't believe. I mean,
Exactly.
no, the sealing of the heart is one of the last things that happens, because basically it's almost like imagine if somebody jams a pen in their eyes and they blind themselves. Okay, in the Quranic language, we'll say, God will say, we blinded you. Right, you did it to you basically did it to yourself almost. Okay, it's the last thing that happens. There's misguidance which happens, which shaitan, because the Quran talks about how the shaitan does misguides, right? And then they will say, okay, but Allah also is like shaitan misguides, right? يضل من يشاء يهدي من يشاء ويضل من يشاء. Shaitan misguides, and in terms of, this is put in at a basic level. Shaitan misguides ibtida'an, in the beginning. Okay, somebody who's in guidance, all right, he becomes misguided. He misguides them away from that. All right, but Allah's misguidance comes as a punishment after successfully refusing guidance again and again, until it's no longer becomes just for God to guide somebody like that. Okay, it's no longer justice that somebody like that should be guided. All right, so their hearts get sealed. Understand? So they've turned away from guidance so much. They've done so much evil. They've done it, and then what? At the end, God forces guidance upon them. No, okay. So there are people who God will misguide as a punishment for their sins, as a punishment for their sins. And I think I put a video about that, right? Well, Hassan, translation of Hassan Maliki, where it's called, at least the thumbnail is called that. I think, create your own guidance or misguidance. Okay, if you look at that, it's a short translation video of Hassan al-Maliki, but it talks about that concept, right? You create your own guidance or misguidance, right? Yeah. So mashallah, yes. No, it's good. It's good to hear that you're getting into reading the Quran in that way. It's amazing when you get into it, really.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I really appreciate the time. I know I took up so much time. Someone else probably needs to come on.
No problem.
Thank you very much. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll speak soon. Assalamu
alaikum. Thank you so much. All right, let's see. Do we have any? Let me just look at the comments first. Well, I've got a lot of comments. I'd like to know sometimes if these comments are directed at me or just people having a friendly discussion inside. Zariab, mashallah, assalamu alaikum, Zariab, good to see you. I've increasingly been thinking that perhaps the Quran wasn't revealed verse by verse or verses, but all surahs were revealed at once. Yes, some surahs definitely, I believe they were. Like, what's obvious is Surah An-Nur, I think, was revealed altogether, because it starts off, Suratun Anzalnaha. Okay, Suratun Anzalnaha. Other verses, no, it seems, if we take the evidence of tradition, which is a touchy subject, but it does seem that parts of certain surahs were revealed. I mean, it's one of the great tragedies. One of the great tragedies and abandonment of the Quran is we don't know precisely. Even though many of the Sahaba boasted, right? There was no surah except I know when it was revealed and about what and about. Okay, why didn't anybody put this down? Why didn't anybody record this, transmit it, etc., so that we have it? Okay, instead we have to look at the context and this and see that Al-Anfal is talking about Badr, so it's probably revealed in this year, etc. But I don't think every surah was revealed in one go. For example, Surah Al-Baqarah, I don't think it was revealed in one go. There's obviously a dialogue that's happening with the Jews, and there's a lot happening. But some surahs, yes, were revealed, of course, in one go, especially the small surahs. Some of the big surahs as well, like Surah An-Nur, it's a very big surah, but it says Suratun Anzalnaha, right? We sent down this surah. Wasn't just, verses or kitab, because don't forget in the Quran there are kutub, But yes, that's a very interesting thing. As once noticed, there isn't a single verse which challenges people to produce a verse like it. Yeah, produce sort of like it. And by the way, I made a post explaining the Quranic challenge. I put it on Reddit, and I cross-posted it for there's a subreddit which is more intellectual, a little bit ex-Muslims who are critiquing Islam more intellectually. And I put it on the religion subreddit, just to let people have a go at the challenge. And the response was very interesting, because one thing I think about the Quranic challenge is very misunderstood. Okay, people think it's all about language and beauty of language and all of this. No, it's not about that. Okay, there are parts of other things which are more beautiful than parts in the Quran because of the subject matter. All right. When it talks about there are some dry parts of the Quran basically which are just talking about laws, right? So even though they are at the peak of eloquence, they will not be seen as a peak of beauty because the subject matter is not a matter for beautiful expression. Okay, the challenge of the Quran is to produce a surah like it, meaning in God's voice and with the same subject matters as the Quran. So if you take that surah and you put it in the middle of the Quran, it would not be out of place. Okay, that's the Quranic challenge. But if anyone's interested, then I can see that. What else here? In fact, most of us just assume it's verse by verse, and then exactly, yeah. So it's not but the smaller surah is surah Kufr, and one person in I think it was our religion subreddit, he said, what is this? Yeah, okay, all I have to do is make a surah, right? I'll do that right now. And he went and he said, okay, he didn't know anything about Quran, it was obvious, so it was unfair for him to even try it against himself. So he went out and I think he searched, okay, so the shorter surah is Surah Al-Kawthar. What is so magical and amazing about that? He asks me, right? And then he says, what is so magical and amazing between that and these 3 verses which I've brought from some poet? So I told him, and then of course he got a bit jittery, saying, all of this you just is something you're making up from your mind. It's not in the verses. You're just making it seem beautiful. I said, okay, then you make your verses seem as beautiful as well. Do a huge explanation like what I did with your 3 verses, which were all morose and about how the whole world is despair and struggle and strife. But anyway, look, it's a complicated issue. Here we have, I think the false idea of predestination has to do with why people think God sent the heart. God seals the heart. So how can he punish me? Yeah, exactly. Some of it has got to do with that. That's a topic I'm not sure I want to get into that. Brother, why does it say if you are called to the Salah from the day of Jum'ah and not in the day of Jum'ah congregation? It's stuck in my mind. To be honest, I haven't thought of that as much. إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا, or I think the correct recitation is فامضوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع. It's applicable, and I mean, it doesn't sound strange to me in terms of the Arabic. إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة. Okay, the min in the Arabic, it fits there. Okay, in English we might not say in. Sorry, we might not say from. But in Arabic, the min, it fits there. Allah says guidance is a reward for doers of good. Yes, exactly. Yahdi ilayhi man yunib, right? Allah says God guides to him whoever is munib. So sort of like somebody who's seeking and repentant and these sort of things. Okay, and whoever seeks good. If we depend on Arabic to be guided, there will not be deniers. It's Allah who teaches the Quran to whomever He wishes. Yeah, well, if we depended on Arabic to be guided, there will not be deniers. So you're saying there will not be any الذين كفروا. Yeah, I mean, look, I think the Quran has its own unique vocabulary. It does have its own unique vocabulary. It was creating new words. Okay, al-qari'atu mal-qari'a wa ma adraka mal-qari'a. Okay, there are things in the Quran which are brand new, and I've been looking for a long time to find the use of kufr for disbelievers, and the use of emaan, and the use of these things in poetry, in abundance, as the way they are in the Quran. Nifaq as well, munafiqeen. Where is that mentioned before the Quran? So there are some key terms which the Quran is sort of almost reviving or bringing out. Anyway, let me bring up Aslam. Assalamu alaikum, Aslam. How are you?
Walaikum Assalam. I'm doing good. Hope you're doing well.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Wonderful presentation. And I do agree because in the Holy Quran also it mentions about these deeds. And then when any individual goes in front of, like, when he goes in front of the Lord, then he will see, oh, this there will be a book. Some in verse mentioned that this book does not leave any deed. It does not leave any deed which I have not done.
Yeah.
So I do understand. I've really got this point very well. But the only thing is that there are some verses. It mentions that those who, the kafaru terms, in some translation it is mentions as those who deny or those who reject, and it mentions that they are the worst of the creatures. So what kind of rejection is it? Because maybe a person is not convinced. Maybe he's not convinced of the worldview that the Quran is. That doesn't mean he's a bad human being. It's just that he is not convinced about the worldview that the Quran is projecting. Even if we observe when the dialogue between a spiritual entity in the Quran mentioned as, people generally call him Khizr and Prophet Moses. So Prophet Moses was not even convinced about what he was doing. Although Quran puts across that whatever he was doing with wisdom or with some like divine this thing, but a prophet is not convinced. So what kind of rejection is this, and why are they worse creatures?
Yeah, like I said in the presentation as well, is one of the tragedies that kufr is made out to be, disbelief in anything. Okay, kufr is not about not believing or something or not being convinced or all of that. It's got nothing to do with kufr. Like I said, one of the ways, the famous saying, if you keep to that a little bit, okay, you'll start to see, by their fruits you will know them. Okay, by their fruits you will know them. All right, it's not thing. Like I said again, الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالُهُم, right? Those verses which talk about their deeds, the deeds of those who have kafaru, right? So flip that as well. Think of those whose deeds are like this. Those are الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Okay, those are الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. It's got nothing. God is not going to punish somebody for not being convinced about something. Okay, He's not going to punish somebody for being honest. All right, it's one of the tragedies basically. So it has to do with kufr. I had a lot of back and forth in those Reddit posts, which I linked in the description and here.
The Holy Quran prophet Moses was also not convinced with that Khizr. He was not convinced what he was doing.
Well, no. Look, the thing about it is that first of all, he was, Musa knew that this person was somebody from God who had learned. And by the way, the thing with Khidr is that he's one of, Allah says, "Abdu min ibadina," a servant from our servants. Like one of the things that people say is, why didn't God stop this from happening? Why didn't God stop this from happening? Well, there's a lot which does happen, which was going to happen, but it was stopped by certain servants of God. Okay, but we will never know about it. We will never know about it. And this the story of Khidr is sort of a window into that. Okay, that God does have people like that. But also the other thing which I want to mention is that these are people whom God gave knowledge of sort of the future of what will happen, but they are not being commanded. So Khidr was not commanded to kill that boy. Okay. Right, he was given. He has a certain knowledge, something which is from God, and God will hold him accountable. Okay, for his actions as well. Okay, it's not that don't think that Khidr was basically doing exactly what God wanted, or he was like a walking God. All right, and so when Musa makes these objections, of course these are all completely correct objections. They are completely correct.
They're very complete objections. I found him.
They're completely right to object. He was completely right to object about all of these. Okay, but what he didn't have, what he didn't have was the patience. Okay, to wait until Khidr explained, because Khidr said, okay, if you come with me, then basically keep quiet until I tell you. until I explain these things for you. Okay, and in the beginning, so you're not going to be able to keep patient with what I'm about. Okay, so the only fault in Khid and Musa was he wasn't able to be patient.
Yeah. So similarly, a normal human being can also be not convinced about certain things.
Yeah.
So yeah. So can we label them as worst of creatures? Because generally, this is they are being labeled.
Again. Okay, look, but let me take it this way. Okay, do you believe if somebody believes, okay, that that they can go, that for example, like some say they can go, that we are supposed to go and conquer everybody, and if somebody doesn't accept Islam, they are killed, and that's it. Okay, so if somebody's like that, can we agree this is one of the worst of people?
I mean, if someone,
just from that point, just from that thing, just somebody who not just believes that, sorry, because there are some people who will say they believe it, but if they were given, the sword in hand or the gun, they wouldn't do it. Okay, we sometimes are dishonest with ourselves, all right? But I'm talking about people who actually go out and do that. Okay, like for example, ISIS. Okay, all the world agrees they are from the worst of people.
Yeah.
Okay, Sharul Bariya. Okay, so it's you need to relook at what kufr is. Okay, yes, if you just in this instance, there are certain things which are translations, unfortunately, they're not going to help us much. They're not going to help us much.
Because there are people I also discuss, they say that this worldview of Quran, like polygamy and these all things, I am not convinced. So there are a lot of things, the worldview is being presented by the Quran. So a person is not convinced. He's a sincere human being, but he's not convinced. Yeah, it's not appealing to his conscience or this thing. But the traditionalists will say no, his heart is sealed, like that. It will. Yeah.
No, and God is patient. By the way, you don't have to be convinced of everything. I mean, how old are you, for example? I'm sorry, maybe that's not a bad question, but we don't have to be convinced of everything very quickly. It's not like, oh, you don't think, okay, your heart is sealed. Come on, stick to the major things. Stick to the major things. Okay, we mentioned before. I mean, one of the live streams we talked about was God's rewards, right? Okay, for those who maintain themselves in ihsan, they'll be given light upon light, right? They'll be given guidance, and things will open up the more and more, and this is part of life. Okay, if you hold on to what you know, you'll come to know what you don't know. All right, but stick with the main principles of religion. The main principles of religion of Islam, they are the world values. They are the world values. Okay. Okay, there's not the person who it's the person who rejects those whom you can say is Sharul Bariya. Okay, so the major world values. Okay, as-sidq, honesty. Okay, don't cheat, don't lie, don't kill, don't steal, don't be good to your parents, be kind to orphans. Okay, give in charity. Who's going to reject those?
Yeah, but let's see if the person accepts this thing, but he says that I'm not convinced about this polygamy and these all things.
These again, these are so minor. These are it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I mean, does anybody have to be polygamous? Is it something that God commands and demands? And no, I mean, it's not an issue. I mean, even the thing with polygamy in the Quran, it's all for the orphans. Okay, it's all for the orphans, right? It's not. It's got nothing to do with just to be polygamous, right? There's a condition. If you are afraid, you as a community are afraid that you cannot be justly with the orphans, then marry of women 2 and 3. And by the way, some of the worst used people are orphans. Okay, even I'm talking about in the modern world, in orphanages, they get abused. Nobody cares about an orphan like a person would. They need a family. They need a mother and father. Okay, they need somebody like that. They get so abused. Okay, from sex trafficking to other things. Okay, this happens in orphanages all over the world. Okay, all the time.
We can only put across certain wisdom about this, but we cannot force someone to accept these things.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but the Quran is talking about that. Okay, And that is something I think anybody can appreciate. All right.
Yeah, because actually these are things
because
that
it is conditioned, right? It's
It's
conditioned.
the reason.
But again, it's such a small issue. Such a small issue.
No, actually, generally what has happened, these all have become a part of Akida and these all things. That's the reason why.
Yeah, but that's the issue, isn't it? The important things are made more important. The important things are made seemingly less important, and the
Yeah.
small things are bloated up and increased. Okay, and that's part of the misguidance of shaitan. It's part of the misguidance of shaitan that makes you focus on the small things, and it was also what the early rulers, they did that to occupy people. They occupy the people by the small things, okay, and then they will not be preoccupied by the main things, which is justice. Okay, the whole of the point of why did, if you ask this question, why did God send the books and reveal the messengers? Why did God send the messengers and reveal the books? Why did He do that? The Quran says, لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. We have sent down we have sent our messengers and sent within the books and the balance, so that mankind may stand up for justice, stand up in justice. That's the goal. Okay, justice. Okay, the whole point of of sending the books, okay, is that. All right. So always hold on to the major things. If you don't, you will let people, various sects, pull you this way and that way, and you'll become completely confused.
So the things that you have emphasized about the values that Quran is encouraging, this is what we will be doing the dawa, correct? Not the other thing. Actual dawa. Okay.
Yeah. One of the worst things is that, unfortunately, I mean, I was just very sad about it. I saw there was this. There's somebody, a YouTuber I used to follow, because they used to just read the Quran. It was a non-Muslim lady. She became Muslim, but she was like, she reads a lot of books just on YouTube. Reads them, opens the camera and reads. And so she read through the whole Quran, okay? And now I saw a post from her. She became Muslim eventually. Now I see a post from her, which I can tell from the words she's using, she's tending towards that extremist Salafi thing, okay? So this is the sad thing, that people fall in love with Islam, okay, because of the Quran, but when they convert, they don't convert into Islam, they convert into a sect. Okay, they go into a sect, right? And then it makes them in their lives more and more difficult, more and more thing, and they think they're being tested. They think they're being tested, but they're just making their own lives, while others are making their life difficult, because they're in a very vulnerable state, right? New Muslims, and so it's a difficult thing. So the da'wah,
the value that can be presented for dawa, that will be much more appealing to other.
Yeah. I mean, one of the inflammatory things Hassan al-Maliki said once to people in Saudi, he said, when they asked how would we do da'wah, how would we give da'wah to the people, to mankind? He said, if I were in charge of da'wah, I would stop all the da'wah outside of Saudi, and I would give da'wah to the scholars and to the students of the scholars and to the students in the schools teaching Sharia. They're the ones who need the da'wah the most. But again, that's a sort of inflammatory thing that he said, just to make people think. All right. No problem. I'm going to bring back on Surah a little bit, because it's almost, I don't want to go too longer than this, but we'll bring Surah on. Thank you again, Aslam. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else, or is that okay? Oh no, he muted himself. Okay, thank you again, Aslam. Okay, Assalamu alaikum, Surah again.
Salam wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam. How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
First on and last off, inshallah.
Yes, I'm the Alpha and the Omega.
Yeah, and the Omega.
Yeah.
And that's like now, can we see
I
some of these? Yeah.
I think it's, I found it interesting when you mentioned just now to brother Aslam regarding the sort of vulnerability that many new Muslims have when they embrace Islam, because I find that the pattern is often quite noticeable. They'll end up falling in love with the beauty of the Qur'an, and they notice that they're the truth within it, but unfortunately once they embrace this newfound ideology, because they're so susceptible to sort of accepting everything that these sort of traditionalists or sort of borderline Salafis tell them, and because it's difficult for them to sort of differentiate between what's actually Qur'anic and what is actually true, and
Yeah.
what is rather just more cultural and based on these kinds of beliefs that have stemmed from society and from things that really don't have much Qur'anic basis, but rather other narrations or things of the like. So it's a lot easier for them, unfortunately, to be influenced by them. And we see even like there are many YouTube influencers as well who, when they end up embracing Islam, the first thing they'll have in their comments is people telling them, oh, why don't you wear hijab yet? Or, where's your beard, brother?
Yeah, definitely. Without a doubt, it's a difficult situation. Let me quickly bring on Ziryab, because he's
So,
asking to come on. Thank you so much, Surah. And again, I'll see you soon.
inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, Ziryab. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm well. How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
Very good show as per usual. It's becoming a regular event now, and I look forward to it. MashaAllah, very nice.
Alhamdulillah.
Setup you've got here.
Yeah.
So yeah, just quickly to make the points I was making in the comments is the starting point. Again, I find a lot of our problems stem from a misapprehension of the issues that we are facing, and so an example of that would be the presumption that the whole of the Qur'an is a religious book, or the whole of the Mus'haf, I should say, the whole of the codex is a religious book. And when you frame it in that way, you're going to run into issues down the line with the stories element, with the narratives, the Qur'anic narratives. If you consider it a religious book and it has to be, and all the connotations that holds, then you might run into problems. But if you take a step back and review that presumption that the whole of the Mus'haf, the whole of the codex is a religious book, and question it, I find that you make your job a little bit easier. And this is, I have to mention him, Samir Islambuli. He makes this point, this distinction between the religious element of the codex, which is to do with theological beliefs and legislative rulings. And as someone who's Qur'an orientated or Qur'an centric, his whole argument is that we should put precedence on the Qur'an for these two things, for these religious elements, right?
Is he talking about Islam al-Buhairi?
Samir Islambuli, not the Egyptian guy.
No, okay, I didn't.
He's more critical of the tradition in the sense of like he's like a Malm, I think, but over in Egypt. I find a lot of parallels between them with Bukhari Gate and whatnot. But anyway, so if the Quran isn't wholly a codex, a religious codex, then we can extract the Qur'anic element, the stories within the Quran, the Qur'anic stories from it, and view that with the kind of mechanisms or the kind of sources that relate to history. For example, if it's to do with Quranic stories, which are narratives to do with history, of course. For us, we place the Qur'an and we give the Qur'an precedence. But for example, like the story that you guys were mentioning, that's what struck the thought in my head about Moses and the servant, right? And this is the standard point in traditionalism. No traditionalist will extract legislative rulings or theological beliefs from the Qur'anic stories, will they?
Yeah.
So that is something that we all agree upon. And the kind of additional point that's being made here is that this element within the codex of religion of stories are not to do with religion, i.e., theological beliefs or legislative rulings, but is the whole of the. So that's making the point that the whole of the codex is not a religious book. The religious element, the theological beliefs and legislative rulings, are a section, and this is something I want you to kind of round off on. That you've spoken about, that there's many books within the Quran and the distinguishing within the Mus'haf. The various kind of, so I'll give it over to you and maybe you can elucidate on that and wrap up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree with that in the broad. I mean, it's all about the language, isn't it? I mean, I think you've been following this Twitter back and forth I've been having for the last 3 days now. Wow, it's stretched on, I think. With on Twitter with somebody, and we're discussing, that I'm trying to discuss that. What we have in terms of what we generally consider Al-Qur'an, right, is in terms of its own language, the intro language, we'd call it Tanzil, Okay, so the Prophet has wahi, right? Inna awhayna ilayka kama awhayna ila, right? Wahi. And then there's what God has sent down, the tanzil. Okay, okay. وَإِنَّهُ لَتَنزِيلُ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Okay, tanzil. It comes down. It's a revelation, a divine revelation. This is what we generally call the Quran. Okay, but then there's other terms, right? Inside the Quran, there's kitab. Okay, there's dhikr. Okay, which is what God has promised to preserve. There's Qur'an, there's Furqan. There are these terms, okay, within the Tanzil, okay, with which it describes itself. And I can definitely see exactly what you're saying being differentiated. That differentiation you're talking about being categorized under one of these things. I mean, I still, there's so much we can think about and have to re-examine the Quran and stuff like that. Unfortunately, we don't have as many working on that. All right, but one person won't be able to think about everything. Investigate every aspect they can. But yes, I mean, for example, like the stories and things like this. Definitely, I think they will fall under these sort of things. I mean, for example, I'd consider it dhikr, right? They'd fall under dhikr. Right. ذكر رحمة ربك عبده زكريا. Okay.
Right.
واذكر في الكتاب واذكر في الكتاب واذكر في الكتاب. Right. So you have dhikr element. Okay, which is part of the book. Okay, and which is again. So we need to sort of like almost sort of make a chart almost about that. Okay, you'd have at the top a tanzil. Within the tanzil, you'd have al kitab, for example. Part of the kitab would be dhikr. Which would also be another part of maybe the tanzil. It needs to be someone needs to think about this.
Yeah, we need a graphic or like a flow chart to kind of
exactly. We need to think about this deeply and see how these terms relate and what goes where. And then you can start talking. And I mean, it's a very Shahruri thing that like sort of what Shahrur did. But I think Shahrur, he went, Allah yarhamu, he had so many terms, right? It's called the kitab of this and the kitab of that and the. It's maybe I shouldn't say as much because I'm not as familiar with his work, but when I tried to get like that glossaries of his terms, and I saw all a huge amount of terms, some of them you can't really identify them in the Quran. He's making these terms, okay, for an idea which he has, all right. But I think if we can start, we might be able in the end get to where Shahrur is, all right. But I think if we just start with the simple with the terms, the encompassing terms which the Quran itself gives, I think we could have something along the sides, along the lines of what you mentioned. Okay, if we talk about this dhikr, so for example, kitab, I think when we talk about the kitab in the Quran, it's talking about this legislative prescriptions. Okay, so when you talk, and each ummah has its kitab. The Prophet was sent to the ummiyina. Okay, to recite the verses which are universal, ayat of Allah are universal. Okay, they're not specific. But then وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ, to teach them the book, the kitab. This will include legislative things which are for them. Yeah. Okay,
the particular rulings for the community of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah, and previous people had their own kitab. Okay, and it can be it can be mentioned about the kitab that could be mentioned in the Quran. But if we separate out these terms, it can be we can get a clearer picture. Okay, but so he animal kitab wal hikmah, and I mentioned the hikmah, which these things I'm still thinking about myself. But I mentioned the hikmah is his teaching the prescriptions with wisdom. Have some wisdom in what in prescriptions. Don't be hard with them. Understand the reasons for them, the goals behind them. I mentioned, for example, that salah is part of the kitab, right? It's a prescription. Okay.
Just before you made that point about wisdom. And what that relates to, or that kind of, I think that's one of the first times I've heard, if not the first time I've heard that explanation for wisdom, which is really interesting, because you'll find Shi'is will take it to justify their own ideology, Sunnis will take it to justify their ideology, right?
Yeah.
But this seems to be like a middle ground where it seems to be more dynamic in the sense of an awareness, a prophetic awareness of when these apply and when the
Yeah.
exceptions apply, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. Have some, have a heart. Have some, some know when things are can be eased. Know when things are supposed to be done. Have wisdom, right? Like almost like the Aristotle idea of wisdom, right? Balance. Okay, or the Ghazalian, the balance. So wisdom is like sort of the balance between things. Okay, to know where things go. So, and also to understand, and one of the ways you know where things should be, how they should be in their correct place, is by knowing their goals. So, I sent, kutiba alaykum as-siyam, right? The fasting is a kitab for you, as it was a kitab for those before you. All right, but the Prophet's wisdom in that, for example, was that whoever doesn't give up lying and false testimony, then God has no need of him giving up his food and drink.
Right.
That's wisdom. Okay, that's the wisdom of that. Okay, that to put things in its place. Okay, understand that the siyam, of course, it's for taqwa. Right. This is basically the Prophet talking about. What's the point of you fasting if you're not going to have any taqwa, when the whole point of the siyam is to achieve taqwa, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So this kind of understanding I think will help to bring things up. But like you said, okay, so we need to examine these terms. Okay, where can everything go? Where did the legislations to the previous peoples and to us, where does it go? Okay, so these terms, I think they need to be really shown where they are within the tanzil, and how they relate to each other. Okay, where they overlap and where they diverge. Okay, kitab, dhikr, hikmah, al-furqan. Okay, these things need to be studied basically in the Quran. So that's basically what I'd say about that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you for that.
All right. Okay. Nice. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ziriyab, for coming on. I'll have a quick look. I'll remove you now. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Take care.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Okay. I'll just have a quick look on the chat. If anything I've missed. Now, Ziriyab, you mentioned about that. We have our friend here. I don't know how I'm going to pronounce that name. I'll call you B. Assalamu alaikum, B. I think Islam is not a religion, but a state of the heart. Islam means submission and is an abstract noun. Yeah, religion is man-made. God just sees us. God just sent us books of guidance. Yes, exactly. It should be all about guidance, right? It's not about. God will not see the label on Yawm al-Qiyamah. He would say, okay, Muslim, Christian, Jew. No, he will look at the realities of what you are, which is one of the things I mentioned in the stream, right? It's all about what you do. بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. And okay, yeah, I think that's everybody. All the things I want to mention in the chat. Again, Jazakumullah khair for everybody for coming on. And a reminder, that if you know anybody who would like to come on and share something, or if you yourself would like to come on and share something, please don't hesitate to do so. The stream is open for all, including non-Muslims. But and ex-Muslims even. But the point is to come in and share contemplation, legitimate contemplation about the Quran. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, and my apologies that we started late and finishing even later than usual. But alhamdulillah, it was beneficial, I think. Assalamu alaikum.